So I think the accessibility part definitely is a huge plus, people in rural communities and, all that kind of stuff. However, I think for me, a hybrid model is always going to be best.
Hello, hi Jose. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking our time. And I have been going through the website for gray matter counseling and consulting, and I was really excited to learn more about that. It seems like you are providing a wide spectrum of services for your patients. So I think it can be a great starting point for us if you talk a little bit about your own professional journey, how you ended up working in mental health space and your vision and mission behind gray matter.
Sure, sure. For me, this was a career change, a pivot. I first 10 years of my career after going to college and grad school and getting my MBA, I worked as a photographer, and I did that, pretty much full time. And then I got a job as a project manager, like for a company in New York. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and did that for about 4 years. And in that time, I moved from Maryland or from Philadelphia to Maryland. I met my wife. We moved in together, started our family, our two kids, and I was here about a year, and I got laid off from the New York company. And at that time, I genuinely thought that I had 2 degrees. I worked for a publicly traded company, like I would be fine. And what I thought would be a few months ended up being like 2.5 years of being underemployed in this new area. And as you can imagine, now being a stepdad overnight to two kids and all these things, that it was very jarring. So one of the things I knew was, all right, let me use this time to just do what I know I can do and make money. So I started shooting again. I started writing and getting paid for that. I got into teaching, which was great. I started teaching photography at the local community college, and it was great because if I didn't have that time, that space to really kind of ask myself, what is it I actually want, and I knew that I needed something to keep me busy because just applying to jobs all the time was driving me insane, and I was able to start a podcast. That's why I still have all this equipment and all this stuff, and still love the medium and all that kind of stuff. And it's still on Spotify and stuff. It's called the Angry Millennial Show. And I did it for a year, and we did 100 episodes in a year, and it was ambitious, and I loved doing it. And through doing that, I realized I want to be a therapist. So at that point, after 100 episodes, I said, okay, how am I going to transition? Because I know I have to go back to school, whether I want to do it or not. And I found peer recovery work. So becoming a peer recovery specialist was something that I could do to like start getting my feet wet in this new field. And then I transitioned to nonprofit work. I became a case manager. I started teaching parenting classes inside of jails, at local detention centers, and really enjoyed that work. Was starting to work with people one on one in the substance abuse and behavioral health units. And that to me was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Then I went to school. So I was going to school the whole time. I went back to school in like 2018. I went to Northwestern, an amazing program there. And I graduated in 2021. And through that time, those 3 years, I worked my way up and became an executive director of a nonprofit. And then right before I left that, I was kind of recruited to go work for the state. So I started working at the Behavioral Health Administration for the Maryland government. And I started overseeing all of the federal grants I used to work under for years, the ones we had in nonprofit. So I had a great experience of doing a bunch of things on both sides of the table, and working my way up from being a volunteer at a nonprofit to running a nonprofit to overseeing a bunch of nonprofits in the state. So I really enjoyed that experience. And then I opened the practice in 22 after I graduated. I gave myself a little time to learn the new job when I went to the state. And I was still seeing clients at an outpatient mental health clinic in Baltimore City. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start my practice like I've always been wanting to. This is what I've always wanted to do. And then I spent about 2.5 years at the state. And when I got to the point where I got my full licensure and I could do whatever I wanted, I said, you know what? This is what I've been working towards for like 6 years. Let me just make the leap. So I left the state in April of 23. So it'll be 3 years this April. And I got this office, my office in Maryland, in Bel Air, in October. So I left in April, was working out of my house, doing just telehealth only out of a home office that I had. And then in October of 23, I opened this office. And what was really great about opening the office was it enabled me to really expand the offerings, you know. So right away I knew I wanted to have a holistic practice. So we had a acupuncturist and a massage therapist here on site. You know, now we have a massage therapist, a functional nutritionist. You know, we have me and a couple interns providing therapy. I also do coaching and consulting work. So the big thing for me too was the idea that because I've worked in so many different areas, you know, like community college, 4 year universities. You know, while I was in school, I taught at University of Baltimore, and then I had to stop when I went back to school because it was just too much, you know, being a professor and being a student. And then as I when I graduated and I want to go back, I started teaching at Towson University, which is a large university here in Maryland, in the psych department. So before I was teaching in the business school using my MBA, and then now the last 5 years I've been at Towson teaching in the psych department. And it enabled me to use all those skill sets. You know, I teach industrial and organizational psychology. You know, the consulting side is, hey, I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked at public traded companies, I've worked in the, you know, the private sector, the public sector, I've worked for the government. Like, I've done all kinds of different things. So what we do is we go into various businesses and we help them with making happier employees, you know, more fulfilled employees. I think that's always great because to me, if I just did strictly clinical work, I would get burnt out, bored, you know, all that kind of stuff. So having the various funnel incomes is good, you know, for me, especially as a neurodivergent person with ADHD. Like, I need a lot of stimulation. And then in the last year, one of the other things that we brought on, which has been really great for myself and for clients, is ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So using psychedelics as a therapeutic modality. You know, and here in the States, the only one right now that is FDA regulated is ketamine, and legal. So that's what we offer. And really, it's been great. I've been doing it myself for the last year and change, and really have had the most return on my investment in terms of my mental health and other things than I've had with any other kind of you know, medication or you know, therapy. And that's been great. So really, realistically, that's how I came through the last bunch of years and got to this place. And now we're in a mode where we have interns, we're helping people build their career. I think the biggest thing that for me is I'm sure, like, you've talked to different people who own their own businesses, is like, as you scale, it's how do you transition to giving up control? How do you transition from being the business to running the business? And I think right now that's been, I would say, one of my bigger challenges too, is just, you know, giving out clients to, you know, interns, giving out clients to other therapists, you know, people coming in, me meeting with them, but then immediately giving them to someone else. It's always been a very growth stage, if you will, in terms of my skill set.
Yeah, and thank you, Jose. You have a really inspiring story, and I think we can talk for hours on all those things which you have done in your career. And but I would say that honestly, you have traits of the greats. For example, you are not afraid to make pivots, and you have
Mhm.
done many in your life. And then the thing I really loved about your experience is you sound like a lifelong learner type person. You are
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
there to learn. And what you mentioned about delegating. I think delegation of responsibilities, delegation of work, delegation of your clients or patients, it's really tough, especially in the space you are right now. We are not talking about technical work. Technical work can be easily delegated, can be automated, can be eliminated, but especially in mental health, it's challenging because you need to be 100% sure that the person you are who is going to handle the patient on your behalf should be in the same mindset as you are. And this resonates with what I want to ask you, because when you are trying to explain the consulting work you are doing, especially to help people with burnout and all that, I think this is a very important area which is less talked about and often overlooked is burnout for clinicians.
Mm.
And over the passage of last many years, I go to many trade shows and I attend healthcare conferences, and I think slowly now this is started to become a full-fledged sub-vertical of healthcare where people are thinking to start building tools and put technology in place that can help with clinician burnout. So, in your experience, I think we are in a time where technology is penetrating in all areas. Do you see any such tools or any such technology advancements happening that can help with burnout of clinicians and maybe help them with some administrative work, help them with some operational work, and they can purely focus on what they enjoy doing, providing
Yeah.
them.
I'll be honest, I was really interested in chatting because that's the one thing that I think for our space, if it's no secret, venture capital money has been flowing into mental health the last 5, 10 years. I think one of the things they're realizing is you can't throw just money at everything and suddenly have, disruptive, gains. Because we are, like you said, we are helping people. We are people helping people, and with the way our healthcare system works with HIPAA and all these sorts of privacy laws, you have to be very, very careful about how you interweave AI and other things into your business. And I think it does make it where, there's lots of things that we can say are positive, but we're always very hesitant to incorporate. And we're just at this point, I think a lot of us are just kind of waiting it out and seeing how it shakes out, because like we know, big data is the thing, right? They're doing what they want to do to data is the new gold and the new oil and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really like you mentioned, how do we utilize these things to combat burnout? And I think one of the things is, I think it's more of a question of what are you doing yourself? Going back kind of old school of like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you, if you're growing your business, are you sure it's what you want to do? Are you seeing too many clients in a day, in a week? What's your work-life balance looking like? It's really just kind of going back to the basics of making sure that you're doing what you need to do for yourself, first and foremost, not just for your clients and for other people. In terms of, like you said, the money coming in and AI is a help. I'll be honest, I don't know yet. I know that venture capital has not been the best thing because they don't understand what we do. They don't understand, the clinical side, the people side. A lot of times they're just chasing growth for the sake of growth and then getting acquired. So it's like, how do we understand that? Like, for instance, BetterHelp and these other things that are coming up, they start at $30 an hour for clinician pay.
Right.
Atrocious for someone with a master's level education, a license to do this kind of work. On average, across the country in the States, the average is like $120 a session.
Right.
And you're giving $30, you know what I mean? And people always say, oh, but it's not meant to be your full-time thing. It's meant to fill in gaps. Like say you move to a new state and you're rebuilding your clinical work, you can do this on the interim. Right, but our business already is exploitative enough as it is, because when you're doing your practicum and your internship while you're in school, very few of us ever get paid for that time. You're doing that on top of probably working another job and going to school. And then when you graduate and I'm a LCPC, so I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. When we graduate, we're called an LGPC, a licensed graduate professional counselor. And for 2 years, we have to work and get 2,000 hours together to then get our full license. Even that period of 2 years after school is can be very exploitative. You get low pay. I was making like $40 an hour during that time, at outpatient mental health clinics. Now maybe like 50 is kind of the norm. But even still, that means that even those places that know that they're going to give you lots of clients, help you to the next part of your career, are paying more than a million or billion-dollar company. So it's really kind of wild to see how they've come into the space and what may be. I think that for sure there's going to be, like you said, ways, like even for me with the consulting side, that's something I know I can incorporate AI a lot more in my work, whether it's client acquisition, reaching out, whatever, I could do that. But I haven't yet because in my mind, it's all just, I use it for like very administrative, simple things like, help me create a contract, help me create, this, help me come up with a plan for a coaching system, and I'll take it from there. So I use it very sparingly for very like framework stuff. And it's really just for my ADHD because I can easily get overwhelmed with a task. Even
Right.
if it's not a heavy lift, I just don't want to do it, or I get overwhelmed, or overthink it, or whatever, and I get paralyzed. What's nice is using it. Like the first time I ever used it was because I was creating a contract, like a subletting contract for the acupuncturist who was sharing my office. I sat on that task for like 3 weeks. I didn't want to do it. And then someone said, have you just put it in like chat GPT or something? And just, I was like, oh yeah. And then I prompted it and said, help me make a contract. This is my name. This is my business. This is the other guy's name. This is the other guy's business. And suddenly I had something that I was done in 5 minutes. And it was my big takeaway was like, it's just a tool, just like anything else. And
Got it.
if you
Yeah.
use it to mitigate your obstacles in your way, whether it's daily work or tasks you don't want to do or whatever, then I think it can be powerful. I think what is scary sometimes is like, are you using it in ways that, like, for instance, now a lot of EHR platforms use it for note taking.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing that yet. You know what I mean? Like, and already they've had people saying, "Well, what are you using the data for? How long are you holding it on to?" Like, sure it's depersonalized, but what are you doing? And they give not great answers. So for right now, we're just gonna be like, okay, if you're gonna play the transparency game, then I'm gonna just sit back and wait and see what happens.
Got it. You're right, absolutely right. And I think, in my humble opinion as well, using AI purely for clinician workflows and purposes is still risky, and this should be done with care. But at the same time, there are non-clinician day-to-day stuff that probably AI can really add value. For example, appointment reminders, patient engagements, those sort of stuff. Like it has shown some good value of that because it is sending automatic reminders for appointment with patients and things like that. I think in that, especially in those cases, probably there is no big harm in adopting that for that segment where you can offload some of the administrative or operational things to AI. So as you were talking, I get a sense that you are also experienced with virtual care as well and in person. Right now, of course, you are doing in person. So if you have an option, do you enjoy in person more or virtual?
Yeah, I mean, I think virtual is great because COVID definitely normalized it, which was nice. Insurance companies were now being able to cover it and seeing it as like a definite, level of care. I think it's helped with, especially like more on the medical side, like psychiatrists and doctors able to see people who are either injured, don't have access to a car, might even suffer from certain diagnoses like agoraphobia and can't leave the house. So I think the accessibility part definitely is a huge plus, people in rural communities and all that kind of stuff. However, I think for me, a hybrid model is always going to be best. I really do love being in person with people and feel like there's an ability to make a stronger connection. But I always say like there's still times where virtual is nice, like I have clients who I usually see in person and they'll be like, "Hey, I got stuck at the office today. Can we just do it from my office?" Yeah, no problem. Or oh, hey, my kid's sick. Can I just see you, virtually? Yeah, of course. So like I think a blend of both is always going to be the best way forward because I think we're all just people and we're all energy and if we can be near each other and pick up on each other's energy and hold the space together in an actual space together, I think that's always going to be a lot more impactful. But I don't think virtual is necessarily a bad thing. I just think that it's great to use for a variety of reasons. Like I said, I did virtual only for a couple years, and I thought to myself, this is fine, and it wasn't until my therapist started kind of challenging me a little bit, and saying, I think you should have an office. I think people should feel your presence and energy like in person. And I started I'll be honest, it took a couple months to me to, because I didn't have the right mindset. I looked at it like, oh, it's more overhead. Oh,
Yeah,
it's an office I don't need, right?
right.
And whatever. And once I let go of that idea and realized, well, hold on, it could actually be a great way to expand your business. And even now, like having interns, having the other services in house, I never could do that if I kept that mindset. I never would have had the opportunity. So I started flipping it, and I think a lot of us always have that scarcity mindset, of losing what we're losing, but instead saying, well, hold on, keep it open to like what you could be opening yourself up to, and that will be even bigger. And I'm really glad I did because now like I said, it'll be 3 years this fall that I've been in the office, and I love it, and I really can't see myself not having this and that kind of thing, and think it's a great advantageous thing to have.
Awesome. Awesome. So, in your day-to-day work, what are typical frustrations or challenges that come up for you? And if you don't mind answering it from both perspective, maybe one challenge as a clinician and one challenge as a business owner. If you have to
Sure.
write one
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah. I think one challenge as a clinician is, especially as now, like I said, as we scale, is like, I really have brought on multiple people who have different skill sets, different, modalities, strengths, because I didn't want us to be this homogenous group where every client came in, everyone's clamoring for them.
Right.
So for me, it's neurodivergence, ADHD, the ketamine work, and then I have other people who do couples, other people who do kids, other people who do um, trauma work. And so what's nice is like when people come in, then saying, okay, we'll find the right fit and we'll delegate. I think I'll be honest, I think the ego sometimes gets in the way.
Right.
And there's times where I might meet with someone and go, man, I really think I could help them. But I'm trying to build this person's caseload. I'm trying to build this person, and I have to be smart about, okay, go. I'll be a point of contact for them. Like if I do think there's a relationship there, I'll be like, hey, I'm still the owner. I'm still part of your treatment network, but this is the person who'll be helping you every day. And as a business owner, I think the biggest question always is too that I struggle with is like, do because I've scaled before and it didn't feel right, and people left and I just kind of didn't rehire, and I went back to just being on my own with one other person for a year, and I used that time to really ask myself, do I really want to scale? Like, am I just doing it because it's the thing that you do? Am I doing it because when I'm full and I want to still bring people on, help people, I need more people? And I had to sit with that because I think that's a very solid question because I'm sure, like, and you see in people you talk to, what is that number, right? Do we have to make six figures? Is it now 500,000? Is it now 1 million? The number is constantly going to change. The goalpost is constantly going to move. But what's wrong with just keeping things small for the sake of being small? You know, like what's wrong with just being on your own and making close to six figures or six figures and just being completely fine? So I think a lot of times as a business owner, because people ask me all the time, what's your end goal? And they'll be like, how many clinicians you want to have? And I'm
Right.
like, that's a great question. I don't know I don't want it to be where I have 30,
Right.
you know, and we have this big thing with multiple offices and in the same state. Would I want to maybe like open an office near my siblings in New Jersey or near my brother in Connecticut? Maybe, but that's just for me to be able to spend time with my family and be closer to them, you know, and all those sorts of things. Um, it's always a question of asking myself very intentionally, do I want to do this? Why am I doing this? And as a business owner, like, what does that look like? Because having a very clear picture is really helpful.
Got it. Absolutely. And I learned this the hard way. I have been running digital health companies as well. That unplanned expansion has killed more companies than challenges. That's what
Mm-hmm.
that's what I have seen in my little experience, that you
Mm-hmm.
really need to be careful. Yeah, scalability is a really good word. Being ambitious is very good, but if your mindset is just to maintain a good quality of care, and especially it matters a lot for what you do, if quality of care is impacted by the expansion, I think a good clinician or a good owner will not be probably happy with that outcome.
Yeah, yeah. Is I'm just real quick. I'm just making like, yeah, I like you said, even just the word of like scaling, like even let's be real, the last what 25 years of business being venture capital, scale, raise money, keep scaling. It's kind of, I'll be honest, it's kind of wild to me that like businesses that don't make money, you know what I mean? Businesses that just have a burn rate of this, a churn rate of that with people and money. And then you say, oh, but it's a valuation on the future possible profits. It's like, what happened to just saying you sell a service or a widget and you
Right.
make X number of dollars, and
Right.
if you're profitable, you're a good business. You
Absolutely.
know, like it's frustrating for me because as a small business, there's times where I want to access capital to grow, and they say, "Oh, well, you're not making $500,000 a year." I'm like, "Okay," and there's companies that burn through $1 billion a year, and they're valuated at you know 10, $15 billion a year.
Exactly.
Where's the logic? You know what I mean? Like what we're doing is something that is very important. It's something that is constantly going to be in need. You know, we're not even recession proof. We're recession positive because when things are bad, people need people to talk to, you know,
True.
and get help. So it's definitely something that for me I hope changes. But it's I'm um, keeping my hopes up. Keep my options open in that sense.
Absolutely. So, Jose, do you also have, I'm sure there must be a lot of things in your mind going on with respect to improving the quality of care. Do you have any, if I would say priority one, priority two, priority three things in your mind that you want to do in order to improve the quality of care that you are providing right now?
Well, that's a great question. I think in terms of quality of care, I think the interns we brought on recently and other clinicians, I think to me that's a big part of it. Is hiring people that I know are good at their jobs, that I know are want to do this work for the right reasons and have the skill sets that we need, and I think that is really the biggest thing right now is just, bringing more clients through the door, and also showing them that all these different services are important, like right now the consulting has been good, the clinical has been good, but I'll be honest, it's a struggle to get the massage therapist more busy and the functional nutritionist. And I think sometimes it's because people don't, as much as they want to, they just equate, a office to therapy. They equate a spa to a massage, right? And it's like, how do we combat that and say, Well, if you look at it like it's all kind of therapy, it's
Right.
just one is going to help you feel more relaxed, one is going to help you process your problems, and one is going to help you be healthier, in terms of like understanding what nutrients you're missing because they do hair samples and other stuff to understand like what is it that your body actually needs.
Yes.
And so I think maybe just better marketing of our position to really have people understand the importance of like whole body wellness, and being a holistic kind of model. I think that's one of the things that we could probably do better that would help in clients coming in the door be more informed,
Right.
on what we offer. Yeah.
Got it. So as I understand, you have brought in help, and I think most of the folks you have brought in are on the clinician side of your business. Do you have in your mind bringing in help on, for example, running the business, improving, for example, business development side of things, or maybe getting somebody to help you on, as we were talking about technology adoption, for example, somebody who can carefully assess, okay, these are the smart tools. We need to carefully see if they are serving the purpose right. They are really improving the care instead of creating some security loopholes. Something like that on your plan for future?
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, like my wife has been helping for a number of years, but she's been on the side, because she's a creative director, an art director. So she's had full-time jobs and helps me on when she can. More recently, she's transitioned away from that kind of work and is trying to start an independent bookstore called Oddbird Bookshop. And I think that's been a nice opportunity that she's been able to help more. But you're right. I mean, we've had in the past, we've had admin assistants and other people who have helped with different things. What's really nice is the people we bring on in terms of the the interns is that they need indirect hours as long as direct as well. So it's like, we've been really good about, and everyone we bring on, we interview and say like, hey, being private practice, I can help you learn how to run a business. You can help me. I can give you more indirect skills. It's not going to be where I'm a clinic where I'm going to give you 30 clients day one, and overwhelm you. It's more of, I'm your supervisor and part of my job is to help build you up as a clinician. So I'm going to give you some clients. I'm going to help you sit down on my clients and see how I do things. I'm going to observe your sessions. And as a kind of, kind of going back and forth, then you can help me with the business in some way. And we do it very skills and strengths based. Like we have one who used to work in corporate communications, and she used to love writing for the company blog and interviewing C-level executives, C-suite executives. And I said, great, we have a blog that I would love to make content about the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So we started a series where we interview different practitioners around the area, around Maryland, and to highlight them and the work they do and all that kind of stuff. And then we actually also interview researchers and professors and academics who are researching psychedelics and saying, hey, where's the latest research right now? What do you think is the future of this kind of work? And that's a helpful way of just informing the public about, psychedelics assisted therapy, about ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And I think that has been really great to have just the support in that regard.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jose. And I
Yeah.
think we are a little over time and we were
No,
having.
it's totally fine. I appreciate it. I had the time and I appreciated it. And thanks for, reaching out. This is a great conversation, and I look forward to checking the episode out and seeing more of your stuff. And
Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity.